Hey there, Monty Turner, Liberty University, HIST 701. What do you think? What do you mean, just in general? When I say, oh, this is like a word game. Medieval Russia. Is that your mind going blank? No. It's a whiteout, like lots of snow. Oh, that's it? Medieval Russia? A whiteout? Really? Wait, you're serious? Medieval Russia? Is that like a thing? Yes, medieval Russia was a thing. In fact, I recently used JSTOR to look up some articles on medieval Russia. So the first one was about the Livonian Wars. It was an article in the Journal of Russian History, and it was written by an Alexander Filyuskin. Wow, I would have a hard time saying that 3 times fast. What was it called? The title, yeah, it was called Livonia War in the Context of European Wars in the 16th Century, Conquest, Borders, and Geopolitics. A little long and complicated. It's scholarly, it's what we do. So in this article, Filyuskin looked at the 16th century conflict called the Livonian War. And it really wasn't one war, it was a series of smaller conflicts. Livonia, that tiny piece of land that the Crusaders had carved out of the pagan lands along the Dvina and in Estonia, were still being ruled by the Teutonic Knights in Sweden, Lithuania, Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, and of course Russia. Thought that was enough of that, so they thought that the big boy neighbors should take over. Now, Lithuania, Poland fought 5 border wars with Russia over Livonia. They were allied with the Holy Roman Empire in 2, England and Denmark in another, Sweden in 1, and Filyuskin examined how Russia was treated and pretty much opposed by Western Europeans. He found that scholars had never really looked at these conflicts like they did other European conflicts at the time. They considered Russia to be an outsider. He found that scholars wrote about the colonial wars differently than they did internal European wars, like the Spanish in Mexico and South America, Portugal and the Indian and the Red Seas, the Holy Roman Empire in Tunisia. Scholars looked at Russia and Livonia as this type of aggressor, colonial, even though they had been in the Livonia area fighting wars for centuries. And they'd been in the Baltic looking to conquer lands for centuries. Filyuskin also found that there was a religious aspect to this because it usually pitted the Eastern Russians against the Roman Catholics and Protestants of Western Europe. What's another article you read? I read a 2014 article from the Journal of Russian History by Mikhail Krom called The City of Pskov in the 15th and early 16th Centuries, Communal Liberties and Fragmented Sovereignty. We're scholars, dude. Get over it. So in this article, Krom looks at Pskov as a case study in how governance of a city changed in the late Middle Ages, using primarily city chronicles like the Chronicle of Novgorod, the Pskovian Chronicle. Krom found that in the 13th to 14th centuries, Pskov was somewhat independent. Not totally, you see. The city was governed by a combination of city officials and an outsider prince. Outsider prince? What is that? It's actually kind of interesting. It's normal in those days for a prince and a city peeps with the church officials to collaborate in the running of the city. But Pskov did not have local church officials. They asked over the centuries to have a bishop assigned to them, but by the nearby archbishops in Muscovy and Novgorod, and they were denied every time. And they had no local nobility, so if they wanted a prince, they had to invite an outside prince. Usually guys who had older brothers ruling someplace that they'd never be allowed to come to rule. So they invited princes. That's weird. And no bishop. Was it small? No. In fact, according to city records, Pskov had 30,000 people there in 1510, and that's a pretty good size. So a collaboration between outsider nobility and city people. Correct. Krom wrote, in the first half of the 13th century, the city of Pskov played its own role in Eastern European political relations and concluded treaties with neighboring countries. But Krom found that over the time, by the middle of the 16th century, Muscovy slowly took the city over, with its legal system being run more and more as an arm of the Muscovite legal system, and the Pskovians being more involved in Muscovite conflicts. Now, the third article. That's an article from the Journal of Military History by Michael C. Paul called The Military Revolution in Russia, 1550 to 1682. I like short titles. They're easier to read. In this article, Paul looks at the military revolution in Russia, which took place like the one in Western European countries at about the same time. He found that among other things, the organization changed as Russia grew a middle class that was neither noble nor peasant. New soldiers. New technology, of course, changed things in the age of gunpowder, with the first troops that were using gunpowder weapons appearing in the early 1500s. There were other things, but Paul makes it clear that these changes were behind the times of those that took place in the West, but they did set the stage for Peter the Great to completely change things up, revolutionize things, and create one of, if not the most advanced military in Europe. So did you like these articles? Well, yeah, they were filled with a lot of good info, but only Crom's article on Pskov made good use of primary resources. The other two were way too reliant on secondary stuff, although Paul was able to call out some archaeological works. I like my scholarly work to be scholarly. Primarily, I understand that. Funny. So otherwise, all three articles did point out an interesting aspect of Russian history, that the Western scholars saw anything having to do with Russia from any period through the lens of the Soviet Union. In fact, Polyushkin wrote that in the historiography paradigm, the Livonian War was conceptualized as Europe against the Russian Empire or Europe against the Soviet Union. In other words, because of the Soviets were not friends of the West in the 20th century, historians during that time had a hard time seeing them as one of European fold when they wrote about the 16th century. Food for thought: how does our current culture and times influence our studies? Have a good day.